In today's episode, I speak with Professor Pete Alexander about the mistake of trading your health for your career. Professor Pete was rushed to the hospital due to high stress levels that put him 1 hour away from being in a coma. We discuss stress and eustress and his journey of recovering his health from the clutches of his career. Professor Pete advises on how you can tell that you're stressed and what you can do about it. Finally, Professor Pete provides one key tip to lower your stress levels in the moment. Listen up to the rest of the conversation. Before we begin our conversation, here is a quick shout out to the pathologically curious. Check out the Maverick Paradox magazine. It's a digital magazine written by Mavericks for business owners and professionals. You can find the magazine at themaverickparadox.com. The magazine's aim is to provoke maverick leadership everywhere. Welcome to the Maverick Paradox podcast, where we explore what it is to be a maverick and discover effective modes of leadership. I am Judith Germain, and my mission is to propel the maverick mindset into a world where character and integrity will ultimately have a higher premium than personality and bureaucracy. So thank you for joining me on this journey. If you would like to continue with me, then please subscribe to my podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or one of the other popular podcast platforms. And today our guest is Professor Pete Alexander. Hi, Professor Pete. How you doing?
Hi, Judith. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. I'm looking forward to what you have to say and what I'm going to learn from you. So, I love learning, so I'm very excited about today.
Well, me too. I appreciate your time.
So can you tell me then, who are you?
Sure. So you already introduced my name and stuff. So I've been in sales and marketing. I've had a long and successful career in primarily in the medical device field, and then transitioned into stress relief work 3 years ago after I experienced serious burnout from the stress associated with my career.
Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So I've had a lifelong experience and relationship with stress. I grew up in a very dysfunctional family. But the physical aspects of it really started showing up back in 2008. If you've ever experienced a time when you felt mentally and emotionally overwhelmed, that was what was happening to me back in 2008. It was like a perfect storm of stressful activities that culminated in my diagnosis with stress-induced diabetes. The problem was that I didn't listen to my body about what the stress was doing to it. And so I continued to keep burning the candle at both ends for another 10 years until I ended up in the emergency room with a severe case of diabetic ketoacidosis. And for your listeners who may not know what that is, basically my body was eating itself alive because of my stress. And the crazy thing is, so when I got admitted to the hospital, the doctor said I was 1 hour from being comatose. My blood sugars were so high that the medical grade glucometers could not read it. So they estimated that they were 8 to 10 times higher than normal. And after they transferred me to ICU, I spent several days in ICU. And on my second day in ICU, I get a text from my boss, who was a micromanager, and that text, it was about 6 a.m., and that text said, "You have a webinar you need to run at 8 o'clock. What are you going to do about it?" And, my boss knew that I was in the hospital, and what a surprise. I didn't have my work laptop with me, so here I was trying to do everything I could to try and reschedule that webinar using my phone. And so the nurse on that was caring for me at that point, they were checking my blood sugars every half an hour to every hour. And as I'm trying to reschedule the webinar, she goes and she takes my blood readings again, and it was like a 45-degree angle, and my numbers started shooting straight back up. And she just says, matter of factly, she says, "You realize that's what put you in this hospital bed in the first place." A complete stranger tells me this, and it was sort of my epiphany moment. And I realized at that point that I was trading my health for my career, and that's a really bad trade.
Mm.
So I started, I really gave that a lot of thought for the rest of the time I was in the hospital, decided that I needed to take care of my health because if not, I wasn't going to be around much longer. And so I decided to leave that very secure job, and I started focusing on my health, trying all these different stress relief tools and techniques. And what I noticed was that not only did my stress go down, but my glucose numbers as a diabetic went down, my weight went down, and my energy level went way, way up. It was like I had discovered a fountain of youth. And it's what's crazy is that if you look at pictures of me when I first became diabetic, and how I look today, other than more gray hair, I look younger than I did 13 years ago. That's what's crazy about what stress can do to you.
So does that mean, thank you for sharing, by the way, does that mean that you're no longer diabetic, or are you still diabetic?
No, I'm still diabetic. Unfortunately, um, in order to reduce your diabetes, at least from what clinically it's been shown, the only study that I've seen that showed that it was clearly how you can reverse diabetes is to go on a 600 calorie a day diet. And I even asked my doctors about that, and they said that probably going on something like that would be too stressful for your body. So I'm still diabetic, but I don't have to take nearly as much insulin as I used to when I was fully stressed out.
So I'm sitting there saying 600 calories. Is that because you were diabetic, or you mean for normal?
No,
Normal.
600 calories. So that's what the clinical study showed, that the patients who went through and did a 600 calorie a day diet for three or 4 months, I don't remember specifically, they were able to reverse their diabetes. Um, and so those people, they estimated that the reason the pancreas wasn't working was because of some excess fat around the pancreas that was removed by going on such an extreme diet.
Wow.
But
The
it really,
difficulty.
that's pretty close to starving yourself, because that's like
Mm.
literally 600 calories is like imagine having one boiled egg and maybe an apple for a day. I mean, it's just crazy.
It is. Yeah. It's yeah. Not even children can live off of that. So,
Right.
did you know you were stressed? If you sort of,
Well, it's interesting. Um, I knew I was stressed, but what I just kept on doing was thinking, I don't have time to worry about it. I just got to keep going. And the thing is that there's what I learned as part of my journey was that there is good stress and there's bad stress. And if you have good stress, which technically is called eustress, eustress, that is actually perfectly fine because that's the kind of stress that we get when we're doing stuff that we love to do. So if we have something that is a deadline that we have for something that we're passionate about, the stress of meeting that deadline is actually good stress. But where we really have to be careful, and what I didn't do a good job about, was dealing with the negative stresses that come in typically two flavors. One is rumination, which is something about the past, where let's say we're guilty about doing something or not doing something, or something happened or we didn't, whatever it is that we have guilt about the past. The problem is it's in the past and we can't change that. So really, if you can focus on positive learnings from that and then let go the rest, that is what we really need to do with the rumination. And then the other flavor is anxiety about something that may or may not happen in the future. And the problem is that when we worry about the negative outcomes of something that might happen in the future, the problem is that we often manifest that negative outcome because we're sending that negative energy out there. And so if we can do whatever we can to minimize rumination in the past and anxiety in the future, then we're actually going to be ahead of the game, and actually stress will not be a negative factor in our lives. But for me, I didn't know that. And so I just continued to worry about it, stress about it. And, eventually, your body does give you signals. So early on, you might get back and shoulder stiffness, because we often, when we're stressed, and we're sitting, let's say, at a desk, we'll be hunched over often when we're stressed, and that puts pressure on our back and our shoulders. But there's other ways that it'll indicate it. Like you might get frequent colds. So instead of like one cold a winter, let's say, you're getting one a month, or have excessive or not enough sleep, or digestive disorders, and no amount of Pepto-Bismol or anything will help your stomach, or you're reaching for the aspirin in the cabinet every day or every other day instead of occasionally because of constant headaches. Those things are your body telling you. And in fact, another one is weight fluctuation, because you can either gain or lose weight rapidly when you are stressed. And for me, the crazy thing is that right before I was diagnosed with the stress-induced diabetes, I lost 30 pounds in 30 days. And at first, I thought it was fantastic. I was in my mid 40s, and I was losing this weight. I wasn't doing any special dieting. I wasn't dieting at all. I wasn't doing any, I was eating my regular food. I was exercising, but I wasn't doing anything special. And the pounds just kept coming off. And after that 30th pound came off, I decided to have some blood work done. And sure enough, it came back. It said, "Oh, yeah, you're diabetic." And what's interesting is that there's no history of diabetes in your family. So it just came on to me. And as I found out later, what happens is that when we're stressed, the way our body responds to constant stress is through cellular inflammation. And that cellular inflammation is what causes the chronic diseases. In my case, it was diabetes, but in others, it might be heart disease. It could be cancer, whatever. You have to be careful about constantly stressing yourself out, because our bodies are wired the exact same way that they were back in the Stone Age, when we would have that fight or flight mentality, where if a T-Rex or a saber-toothed tiger was to come chase us, there's a short amount of time where we're going to be stressed and we need to deal with that. But nowadays, most of our stress is mental, and we're continuing.
If I just stop in there, thank you for this. What I'm finding quite curious, though, is you don't necessarily know you're stressed out, because sometimes your body is experiencing the stress, but you aren't experiencing the stress. And I think that often happens with maverick leaders. I'll give you an example. Like, say you're in a job and it's a stressful job, but you become really good at handling that stress. So good that you don't think you're stressed. You just come in and you're doing the work and you're running around, juggling everything, and you go home and it just seems normal. But then you've left that job and you've started a new job. And in the time, say, I always used to leave like a week between starting a job.
Yeah. Yep.
And in that week, all of a sudden, you've got colds and you're sneezing and you're coughing and your whole body's kind of like, it's almost everything happened. And it's like your body's going, oh, you've kept still for a minute. So I'm just now going to just let it all the stuff I was holding back, it's all coming now. And then you realise, like, like before, in those, maybe that month in the new job, your responsibilities are really light, aren't they? So then you stop and you suddenly go, gosh, I was really stressed in that other job, but I didn't, my body knew I was stressed, but consciously I didn't feel like I was stressed because I felt like I was handling it. So if you're one of those individuals, either an employee or a leader, do you have any idea of what you can do to recognise you're stressed, especially if your body's going through it, but your mind isn't?
Yes, it's a really good question, because often when you're stressed and it's something like as you described, where you're just going about your job, etc., it's sort of like you get used to it and you're ignoring your body. So it takes a while for your body to truly break down. And so you're not going to get the huge indicators right away. Like I said, you're going to have these indicators that your body is telling you that you're stressed, but if you don't have the time or you're not paying attention to it, what typically will happen though, as the stress progresses, especially if it's mental stress, you're going to start having issues with, let's say, having difficulty focusing. So you might have a lack of concentration issue. You might have mood swings where you're instead of being more even keel, you might be more agitated very quickly. Might have that, start getting some anxiety. Or another one that's very common is when someone is stressed at a particular job, they come home and tend to hit the bottle a little bit too much frequently, or relying on some prescription drugs. So those are all additional indicators that one might be mentally stressed. So what you have to do is you have to be wary of what the signals are. What is it that you're either mentally are you showing, or physically, or both? And if you can be mindful of that, then at least that's the first step, is to become aware of it. And then once you become aware of it, then it's like, okay, so what can we do about that? And people, if they take just 1 or 2 minutes a day to do a little bit of self-care, that can have a huge impact over time. They just have to become aware of it.
Thank you for that. It's
sure,
because I think people talk about stress and stuff like that, but they don't necessarily talk about what you can do to recognize it, only what to do to recover it. And if you had realized that you were so stressed that you was trading your health, you would have done something about it. So thanks for sharing on that.
Yeah, it's crazy too, because before I got diagnosed, my body was actually, my back and my knees started locking up too. And so it was, my body was clearly telling me, you better take care of this, you better take care of this. And I just kept on plowing through because, I didn't know any better. And so at some point, what happens is the body just says, okay, whatever the weakest link in the body is right now, that's the one that's going to break. And it's crazy to think that, typically when I was doing my research on this, frequently something like diabetes is something that is hereditary. And, the fact that I got it out of, basically out of the blue, is a real interesting example of what we can do to, alter our bodies when we don't manage our stress properly.
Okay. That sounds good. So, what can people do um, if they feel that they're trading their health? Because it's really interesting that you're saying that you're in hospital,
Mm-hmm.
seriously ill,
Mm-hmm.
and your boss is saying, "Well, you've got so much to do tomorrow. You need to sort it out." And it felt, from as a Brit, it feels really weird because so far there's all this protection employment law in place
Mm-hmm.
that couldn't happen in this country. I mean, well,
Right.
they could say that, but they couldn't enforce it to do anything. You're sick, and
Right.
that's it. You're protected. So, so you see, so it's like from our perspective, say on this side of the pond, it's like unheard of. So it would be very easy for somebody here to say, "I'm not well, so I'm not working," and there's no one who could really argue against that because you're
Mm-hmm.
protected by law. But if you're in a part of the world where you don't have that protection, how do you have any idea how you stand up to that? Because your health is more important than your work. So what would you
Absolutely.
suggest?
So, yeah, what I would suggest first and foremost is to set proper boundaries.
Yeah.
So I don't, I take full responsibility for what happened to me because I could have managed this. I just didn't know any better. So it's my micromanagement boss is not the one that caused this event for me. Um, I allowed the stress to get to me. And had I set proper boundaries and said no to taking on as much responsibility as I had, and that goes back to when I was first diagnosed with diabetes. Had I, you know, asked for some help, had I delegated some work, had I done proper things for my own health, this wouldn't have happened. So, in having those proper boundaries and being able to say no, um, is really, really, really important. And one of the things that I always like to recommend to people who say, well, I can't say no. Well, you can, instead of saying no, you can say, all right, if you've got a micromanagement boss, one great technique you can do is to say, all right, so you just got handed another project, something that's going to take a lot of time. And if they say, I need this right away, well, if you've got something else that's competing with your time, another project, you could say, well, okay, so which one is more important? And ask your micromanagement boss and let them make the decision because you can't get them both done at the same time. So that's a good example. Being able to stand up to it. If you maybe it's just you have if you can take a break to when you feel that your stress is starting to get higher. We all have a kind of like a stress temperature check, and we can feel ourselves getting a little bit more tense. Whatever it is, for me, it used to be where the hair on the back of my neck would stand up, right? That would be the very first indicator of it. And that usually was because I'd hear the voice of somebody who just would irritate the crap out of me, let's say. So if you feel something like that, that's when you opt to take an act or do an activity that literally can take 1 or 2 minutes and helps ground you. Because if you can just take that minute or two, there's so many different things that you can do to help calm yourself and be able to handle the stress better.
That makes sense. Okay, that sounds good. And would that be different to Pacific stress relief activities that you could do?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ones that are ones that are very easy to do that you can do just sitting at your desk, for example. So one of the ones that I like to do, and I can just walk you through this, is a simple visualization exercise. And for your listeners, I'd highly recommend you're not driving when you do this. But what you do is you close your eyes and you take a deep breath in. And in your mind, you go to a place you like to relax. Maybe it's the beach, maybe it's a park, maybe it's a lake, maybe it's your backyard, maybe it's a spa. Wherever it is, you go there in your mind and take in all of your senses. So, what do you feel? Do you feel the sun on your face? Do you feel the sand or the grass under your feet? And what do you smell? Do you smell the fresh air? Maybe the lotion from the spa? And what do you hear? Do you hear the wind blowing through the trees? Maybe the water splashing on shore? What do you see? Do you see the blue sky? Maybe the green of the grass or the trees? Whatever it is, you just take in all of your senses, and then you take another deep breath in, and you open your eyes. That takes less than a minute for a simple visualization exercise.
And I love the way that your voice suddenly went calm and relaxing.
Yeah, it's funny too because it's interesting. Once I started being much more aware of what stress was doing to me, my voice started slowing down because I used to talk much faster because I would get nervous a lot and anxious a lot, and my voice would get much faster and much higher. So it's a natural way that I talk now.
All right, so you used to be super quick. So were you one of those people that people say slow down, don't know what you're saying?
Yes, exactly. So, especially on the phone, I'd be talking much faster and sorry, can you say that again or slow down or whatever it happens to be? Because especially, when I'd be working with people who English wasn't their first language, that makes it even harder when you're talking very, very fast and they're trying to understand you.
Mm. Yeah, I only speak really fast when I get super excited.
I do too, but yeah, but it's also, I think, the reason why I would talk so fast when I was stressed was because one of the things that's a stressor for us is not having enough time,
Uh-huh.
and so I think I just subconsciously I was talking faster because it didn't take as much time to do that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Because for me, I tend to, when I really get excited, and I also start sort of like jumping up and down, I get a bit kind of like, yeah, this is exciting. But lucky enough, my clients don't seem to mind me sort of jumping around when I get hyper excited. So, so it works out all right. That sounds great. I think this is a great place to stop. I think. Is there is there any last tip or anything that you might want to share?
Yeah. So as we talked about at the beginning, don't trade your career or your health for your career because that's a
Mm,
very bad trade. And what I always mention to people is think about the last time that you felt really, really sick. Did you feel like doing anything other than lying in bed? Probably not. And when you're like that, you don't have energy for your job. You don't have energy for your business. You don't have energy for the people that are important to you in your life.
mm,
You're not really, you can't do anything. So don't take your health for granted. Make
mm.
sure you do a little bit of self-care. And I have over 150 different easy to implement tips that they can check out on my blog at petealexander.com and give something a try. And all it takes is 1 or 2 minutes a day, and it'll make a huge difference long term to you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Would you come back again?
Absolutely.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you for having me on the show.
Wonderful. Thank you once again for tuning in to the Maverick Paradox podcast. I hope you have enjoyed listening to my conversation with Professor Pete as much as I enjoyed having it. At the Maverick Paradox, we improve your impact and influence by enabling you to effectively strategize, innovate, and execute. To find out more, contact us at judith@maverickparadox.com. Thank you.
KLDR Online, Leadership Development Radio.
Hi, this is Judith Germain. Join me on the Maverick Paradox. This is my show where we will discuss maverick leadership in all its guises with experts in their own fields. Have you ever wondered where you can find maverick leadership and what it is? Well, join me on the Maverick Paradox on your leadership development station, KLDR.
Check out the Maverick Paradox with Judith Germain starting the week of September 6th, only on KLDR Online, Leadership Development Radio.
If you are pathologically curious and would love to find out more about the Maverick Paradox, then please subscribe to this podcast on one of the popular podcast platforms. Alternatively, you could explore our resources on Mavericks at maverickparadox.com or read the Maverick Paradox magazine. We publish frequently each week. If you subscribe, you will get our monthly newsletter. And let's not forget my book, The Maverick Paradox, The Secret Power Behind Successful Leaders. For those that love a good discussion, you could apply to join our exclusive Facebook group. Finally, if you would like to work with us or are interested in the Maverick at work, check out maverickparadox.co.uk.